Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.
Hello, and welcome to The Money Factor, our program on local business and personal finance topics. I'm Richard Naylor, your host. With energy prices rising, there's a lot of pressure to keep prices down. Our guest today is Alice Miller from the PSC. It's the local regulatory body for utilities. She can help us understand some of their programs and give us a little context. Good afternoon and welcome to the show.
Good morning, good afternoon.
Could you give us a little idea about what the PSC does, what the mission is?
Sure. The Public Service Commission is responsible for all the utilities in the state, and that includes the natural gas, electricity, water, telecommunications, cable, and in New York City also steam utilities.
We don't see a lot of steam too much around.
That's
here.
localized.
Right.
That's just in New York City. And the role is to ensure that there's safe and adequate service at just and reasonable rates. And part of the mission now is also wherever markets can be made competitive to try and encourage competition.
We want to talk about some of the programs that you're doing. We want to touch on the options that we have for different energy sources. I just wanted to mention, though, I was reading through some newspaper articles that were covering your recent trip to Western New York, and I noticed that one person was complaining that because energy prices were rising, it proved that the whole business that you're trying to do is not working. And I thought, well, that's not fair at all. When the cost of a barrel of oil goes from $20 to $100 or $70, obviously things go up.
The supply prices are based on supply and demand. So when you're looking at the commodity itself, either natural gas or electricity, it's based on what's going on around the country. When we have everybody turning on their air conditioners all at the same time on that hot August day, you're going to see prices go up. And in the same way with supply last August, when we had the disruptions in the gas gathering fields because of Hurricanes Katrina and Rita, there were also spikes in prices because supply was limited and people still had demand.
Right, I thought it would be just fair to put a little perspective that the world is a very interconnected place and we can't control things that are beyond our reach.
That's definitely the case.
Right.
What we can control, though, is the distribution part of the business. That's the part that's regulated by the Public Service Commission. That's talking about the utility prices.
Okay.
And to set those prices, it's done through a rate case process. That's an 11-month mandatory period that we have. When a utility comes in and they ask for rate increases, we get dozens of parties together. We all go through it in great detail. We negotiate, usually come up with something that everybody can live with, and then the commission makes the final decision.
So there's a lot of adjudication or working with different parties and trying to get them to agree without a lot of court cases.
Right. In general, the decisions are made through a settlement process.
That's great. What are the main tools that you use? And I guess a follow-up question, things have changed a bit in New York in the last, 20 years? You can give me a little context. I'm not sure of the time frame.
It depends on which industry you're talking about.
Right.
For telephone, it's a little over 20 years. For gas, it's been in that time frame. And with electricity, we started the restructuring effort about 10 years ago.
Now, could you describe that restructuring?
Sure. In 1996, the Commission put out an order that laid out a roadmap for what they wanted to do in terms of restructuring. And there were a lot of pieces to it, so it took quite a while to get everything in place. The first piece was to sell off the generation. So the utilities were strongly encouraged to sell their generation, and now virtually all of it has been sold to companies that specialize in running generating stations, and they do it very well. Also, it appeared that another place where we could have competition was in the supply of electricity. So we opened it up so new marketers, they're called energy service companies or ESCOs, would be able to compete as well. And we now have more than 100 that have applied to do business and more than 80 that are actively doing business in New York State. Those are electric and gas, and some do both and some do just one or the other.
So you've managed to get a lot of players.
Yes.
But it's a very difficult process, I think. And I know that in other countries they've tried deregulation. Some have done better than others. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the difficulties of trying to implement this kind of program.
Sure. Well, we wanted to make sure that anybody that does business in the state is really qualified to do business. So they have to go through a multi-step process. There's a process first with the Public Service Commission. They have to show that they're able to do business in New York. They also go through a process with the utility to make sure that their systems can talk to each other, that when they do the billing, send the billing information, it'll go smoothly between the two entities. And for electric companies, they have a third hurdle. They have to work with the independent system operator. And what that is a group that manages the electric grid for the whole state of New York. And to be able to do business with the ISO, they have to show that they're creditworthy and that they're able to do business. So really, they've gone through a lot of hurdles. You're not going to get anybody that's just a fly-by-night.
Right.
To do business, you really have to be serious.
Because you're not going to compete very well if you're not a good company.
That's right.
Now, even a good company is going to try to maximize its profits, and if I had stock in one of the companies that, or whatever their paper is, I would want them to have a good return on their money. So if we're going to have competition to work, don't we need a certain number of people who are signed up for this, so that, just like anything else, if we're looking for a good rate in health insurance, you can't have one person go in and get a lot of attention and say, I won't go if you don't give me a better rate. But if you have a lot of people, you can do that. So is that part of why you need more people to sign up with different companies?
Well, what you're talking about is close to the idea of aggregation,
Okay.
where you can get strength in numbers.
Right.
If you can get enough people to join together through a group, they can negotiate a better rate. And we're seeing that concept starting to take off. We're seeing school districts banding together, counties in some cases, chambers of commerce. And I think that what we're going to be seeing more and more in the future is consumer groups getting together and buying on behalf of their membership. But as an individual, you also can get good prices if you shop around. And as you said, the energy service companies want to make money, but they also want to attract customers so that they can build up a base. So there are a lot of offers out there.
Right. And I suppose these energy companies had markets before they started selling to individuals.
The energy service companies have different business models. Some of them are unregulated affiliates of utilities, in some cases very large utilities. In other cases, especially with gas companies, they may have started out as oil dealers and branched out into gas, or they may have just gotten a number of people together who understand the trading in the energy markets, and they started a company and then grew. So there are different ways that those companies have started.
Right, and to me that seems important, because if you can't get the companies to find that the market is important, and that's where the aggregating of businesses comes in, then they're not going to be very stimulated to give you the best price. So what can we do to improve the system at this point?
Well, I think what's happening is we've gotten most of the infrastructure in place. It took a long time. Getting the independent system operator to work correctly, trying to get the computers to talk to each other. We've established uniform business practices across the state so that if an energy service company does business in one part of the state, it'll be pretty much the same rules everywhere. Makes their life a lot easier. And also we're starting to get some consumer education tools in place, which are very helpful. We have a website. It's www.powertochooseny.com.
Okay, we can put that up on the monitor.
That's terrific. With that website, you can get comparative information based on your zip code for both electric and gas. And it's very helpful because you can see all the offers in one place. And something that's just happening as we speak is there has been a commission order that says that all of the energy service companies are required to participate, and they're all required to give us information about their prices. So as a result, if you've looked at that website before and said, I really wish there was more information here on pricing, it's there now. And we're in the process of getting it up by Monday. We should have a complete listing of all the information.
That's wonderful, because it seems in the past it's been a little bit difficult to know where I'm going to get the best deal. I know once I tried and I called a company and they gave us a bid, but I don't have time to do that all the time.
That's why we did all the calculations for you. And there are two pieces. There's a column that has the rates, which is just the pure rate information. But there are also some savings you can get by going with an energy service company. If you live in a place where there's a sales tax on your energy, you get a savings on the delivery part. If you go with an energy service company, there are also some back-out credits where you get some automatic savings for going with an energy service company.
Now
So we've calculated that so you can actually
Okay.
see the total bill amounts for an average customer.
Now, this program will be shown in Colonie, and Colonie residents will, about 30,000 subscribers to Time Warner. What's the situation here? It's different than it was in Binghamton, I heard. Out there, they have to choose, and here, I guess it's don't choose, then you just stay. But are there other differences between opportunities?
Sure. Every utility has a little bit different program. When I was down in Binghamton, the customers had a two-month period to make the choice for what they wanted for the next year. So people were understandably trying to get a lot of information. And by going to the Power to Choose site, it was by far the easiest way because it was all in one place for them. Also, we were doing some energy fairs, which we've done around the state, where we have all the ESCOs invited to come. NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, came. The utilities there, we're there. We give some presentations about what the options are, and people can actually pull up their account numbers. We have computers, and they can find out what their usages look like. They can take that around to the different energy service companies and get a personalized look at what makes sense for them.
Okay.
So that's very helpful. We've done one in the Albany area. We did one in August. Very well attended. Customers had really good questions and were very interested.
What was a common question that you had?
What's the best offer?
Oh, well, that would be...
But if you take a look at the website, you at least get a snapshot look. We're starting now, because we're going to be requiring pricing, to get a historical look at all of this. We're building the capability to be able to do a graph of any offer versus any other offer, so that if you look in 6 months, you'll be able to see comparisons, not just that one snapshot.
Is there any aspect of an auction to this? Now, I say that because in the past I've been skeptical whether I'm really going to save a lot of money changing vendors, and I don't have time to deal with it, as I said before. I'll do it once, but I would rather stay with somebody for a while. It's a hassle, I guess. Is there an advantage if I participated? Because if everybody takes the lowest rate, now you're going to have a lot of people moving based on the rate. And if people don't move based on the rate, then what happens?
Well, not everybody looks just at the rate. There
Okay.
are other features that are important to customers. Some people would like to have a fixed rate so they know every month what they're going to be paying. Utility rates in New York generally go up and down depending on market prices.
Right.
So you pay a little bit different price from August versus September versus December based on the supply and demand from that time period. Some customers would prefer to just know what they're going to pay. And so a fixed rate is something they'd like, which isn't an option with the utility, and so they go with an energy service company.
Okay.
Another option that is helpful for a lot of customers is green power. This is where you pay a little more in your energy bill, maybe $10 a month for an average customer. And what you're doing is you're encouraging the development of renewable resources. In New York, it's mostly wind power, but it could be small hydro, it could be biomass, it could be a number of things. And by doing this, customers can know that green power is being generated, put into the grid on their behalf. You can't control where an individual electron goes,
Right.
but the amount that you pay for will make it into the grid, and we do verify that
It
that
will
actually
support that,
happens.
right.
And certainly it's supporting the development of a lot more renewable generation.
Okay, so we look at our options, and I wanted to go back to this idea about a fixed rate versus a variable rate.
Sure.
It seems a little bit like gambling. On the other hand, if I wanted to buy peace of mind, is that what it's really about?
Yes. For example, with the gas rates last year, I think you mentioned earlier that they went way up
Right.
right after Hurricane Katrina and Rita because of the disruptions. And if a customer had had a fixed rate, if they'd locked it in say, July, those rates were extremely favorable in comparison with what we paid last winter. They would have done very well.
On the other hand, if your cash flow is such that you couldn't afford to have it go up a lot, that would be a really good situation where maybe you would say, I can afford this, I'm comfortable.
And then you would know.
Right.
You would know what you'd be paying. Also, any customer, no matter what supplier they pick, can get what's called budget billing, where the estimated amount that you're going to pay for a certain period of time is broken into equal amounts each month, so that can help with budgeting as well.
Okay. And yet it comes out the same at the end of the year.
They adjust
they-
it to make sure that
based
it stays on track.
What is the program that you're pushing especially? I'm having a hard time coming up with the ESCO.
ESCO,
ESCO.
Energy Service Company. We're trying to get out there and let people know that they have choices, and that there are energy service company offers out there, and to let them know how to find them and to try them out and see whether they are appropriate for them or not.
And that's really what we've been talking about all along.
That's right.
Okay.
In this area, National Grid has a program where customers that want to try out using an energy service company can sign up. It's called New Choices.
Okay.
And when you sign up, you get an automatic 7% savings off of your supply for the first 2 months. During that period, you'll be given an offer from the energy service company. If you like it, great, you're all set. If you don't like it, you can leave with no penalty. So
Okay.
a lot of customers find that an easy way to try out the energy service markets.
Are there any trends in terms of energy, types of energy, oil, natural gas?
A big boom in renewables in New York
Okay.
State. We have a target. We're trying to get to 25% within about 8 more years. And to do that, it's going to take a lot of building of additional generation in the area. And there's been a big boom because there's so much interest.
So wind power, you said, is the main one?
Wind power is a big one.
And there are some big projects going on now, I think?
Yes, there are. And a number of them have come to the Public Service Commission. We do the siting, so they go through a really extensive process.
So
it involves a lot of public input, and then eventually, if it goes through the process successfully, then the generation will be built.
I think the thing that affects people the most is this idea of changing your energy supplier. So I think we've covered all the main points, but I'd like to go a little further with it and
Sure.
push it a little further. What are the objections that you've heard to it? What kind of things, so
To
we
an
can go
energy
both
supplier?
ways? Yes.
The main thing is that it's different, and so we hear a lot of customers say, well, I've been with my utility for 30 years, why do I have to switch? And the answer is you don't have to switch. If you'd like to stay with your utility, that's fine. We have no objections to that. Something that is a concern to customers in some parts of the state, they're doing door-to-door advertising, which is a model people aren't very used to, certainly for energy.
Right.
Maybe for vacuum cleaners or knives or things like that. There are some rules that have been established voluntarily by the industry, and many of the companies have signed on to these, about how they'll market. Make sure that they clearly identify who they're with, to make sure that they let us know when they're doing major campaigns so that we have some idea if we hear questions from customers. Things to help customers feel more comfortable about the process. But there really isn't a problem with door-to-door as long as it's done well.
Where do you think you are in terms of helping people understand the process and the program?
Well, it's interesting. There are some areas where we've been going out every year because they have programs where they have to make decisions every year. So we're now in about the 3rd year of doing that, and we see customers that have been through it several times and say, I got it now.
Okay.
And they really are very, very savvy customers. So it takes hearing it a number of times, but eventually they really understand how the markets work.
There seems to be kind of an ebb and flow in the Capital District. We'll hear a lot of publicity and then it'll just kind of be quiet for a while.
There was a big upsurge when we started the New Choices program. A lot of interest in new energy service companies coming into the area, a lot of advertising. And I think as new programs roll out, you're going to see an increased interest in people taking a look at the programs.
Let's look at the other side of what you did just for a moment. You're still trying to make sure that people are treated fairly and that the prices are fair. So how do the two things work together? How do you balance the regulation and the competition?
When we have competition, we basically lightly regulate the energy service companies. It's not that we don't have any control over them at all. If we see that there's something that really is a bad practice, we'll step in because we don't want small problems to become big problems.
Right.
So we keep a look at the trends, and if we see that there's a trend that's going in the wrong direction, we'll call them in or we'll talk to them on the phone and make sure that we get things going back on track the way they should.
Okay. So let's move abroad a little bit to some of the other things that the PSC does. You said they also regulate telephones.
Yes.
That's a booming and exciting area with the cell phones and the landlines. And what's going on there these days?
Well, in telephones, what we regulate is the landline part of it.
Okay.
Cell phones are not part of our jurisdiction. And so there's a feeling that we want to be more hands-off over time. And so there's been less and less regulatory, hard regulation as time goes on.
Is the purpose of that, or the cause of that, that in the past if you had one pipeline and everything was very simple, somebody could really control everything. But when we look in telecommunications, where's the competition coming from? Cell phones is the bigger competition than the landlines. So
Right. Well, what's happened in telecommunications is where, if you went back before '84, before the breakup of the Bell system, everybody had the same basic kinds of phones. Everybody tried to call late on Sunday nights to talk to grandma because it was just too expensive other times. And what we've seen by opening the world up to competition is just whole new industries. Cell phones just weren't around in '84. And we're finding that new ways of marketing, new networks, new ways of packaging the minutes, the costs have come way down for a lot of these packages. So just a very different industry than when it was all very highly regulated.
I wonder, is there a similarity in the power industry?
We're starting to see it.
Yeah. What would be the competition there coming from the outside?
Well, you see a lot of different ways of marketing. You're going to see advertisement, which the utilities in the past haven't done a lot of. You'll also see that different ways of putting the packages together. In many cases, customers want to see everything on one bill, so that's pretty much the norm. An energy service company will usually team up with the utility to do the billing.
Which means one check, and that's the...
Yes,
right.
yes. And in fact, it's possible with some companies to not only get your electric and gas on one bill, but telephone as well. So all kinds of different ways
in other
of
parts of the
marketing
state,
things.
not...
Yes.
Uh-huh.
So just anytime you can think of a new idea, it's probably out there somewhere, or it will be if you wait around a few more months.
Right. Wind power, do you think that can reach that 25%?
Well, it won't just be wind power. In New York State, we are really blessed with a lot of hydropower, and that's brought us up to where we're already at about 19% renewables. Because we had a lot of hydropower to start with, and you add on the wind and things like anaerobic digesters. This is where you take cow manure and you turn it into a gas that you can use.
I can see why you say anaerobic digester.
Yes, right. Or biomass. This is where you find a plant that grows quickly, like willow trees, and you use that to generate electricity. So there's lots of different options. The New York State Energy Research and Development Authority is doing a lot of funding of innovative projects, and there's just a lot of testing going on of different possibilities.
I think there are probably two big things that people think about when they think about utilities, and we'd rather not think about them. I think we'd rather just turn the light on. But we think about them for two reasons. One, if they get too expensive, and the other time is when they go off. And then we're really unhappy. I remember that we had a big blackout, 2003?
I believe that's right.
And the PSC is still in charge of trying to help ensure that we continue to have good power.
That's the delivery part of the business, and that's the utility responsibility, and we keep a very close eye on that. Reliability is important, and if you ever have any kind of power outage or if you smell gas, it's the utility you contact. And that's the way it'll be. That's the model for the foreseeable future. We take it very seriously in terms of keeping the lights on, and in every rate case we have very strict standards that we set. If there are too many outages, there are going to be penalties. So it's something the utilities are going to focus on and pay attention to.
And all this interconnectedness of utilities, it's great when you can share, because it's expensive to hold a little electricity in your hand, right?
The systems are interconnected almost everywhere in the United States. And most of the time, it's a very, very good thing, because you can make sure you have enough supplies, and you can also make sure that the most inexpensive resources are running at any given time. So you get a very efficient system. There are a few times where you have something that becomes a problem somewhere and it cascades so fast that nothing can be done. That's what happened in that blackout that you're referring to. And when we have major blackouts across the country, generally it's because something happens and it's just not possible to disconnect the system fast enough.
Well, we're getting close to being out of time, but I want to go one more time back to your main purpose, and your job is really to promote, I would say, competition. Is that correct?
Yes. I'm from an office that
Right. So
does that.
let's reinforce that a little bit at the end, so we don't get off into generalities. One more time, what would be the best thing for people to do in terms of when they're thinking about their utilities?
I would definitely recommend that they go to our website. That's www.powertochooseny.com. If they don't have access to the web, we also have a phone number. It's 1-888-ASK-PSC1. And if you call that number, we'll mail you what you would have seen if you'd gone to the web. And what you can get by putting in your zip code is a listing of all the offers for your area. So
Okay.
in one place, it gives you all the information. It's a whole lot easier than trying to call everybody yourself and to try and do the calculations after that.
Right. And I always give people one last chance. Is there something that I should have asked you that I forgot to?
Oh, I think you've been very
Did
thorough.
pretty well? Okay. Well, I want to thank you for being on the show. It's always interesting to learn more about what's going on in our state. Energy is a very important aspect of what we do, and along with our education system, we need to have a good infrastructure.
I agree.
So thank you. And I want to thank everybody for watching and invite you to next week's show and ask you to have a great week. Take care.
Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.